G'day, community. How we going, guys? Today we're going to be jumping on again with Jules for our fantastic nutrition segment. Sorry, just popping on my glasses there. So, we got a fair bit of really good reception from you guys from the last interview that we did with Jules, where we kind of covered her philosophy and touched on like the basic things that she really likes to do when it comes to nutrition. I think we have her on now. I'll just check. Oh, no viewers. Oh well, she'll jump on in a second. But really covering her basic philosophy. And just to reiterate, the big takeaway was kind of being aware of the food police and understanding, there's no specific rules about our dieting, and that it's far more important to have a sense of intuitive eating. Understanding things like hunger and fullness cues. Are we actually thirsty instead of being hungry? Not judging ourselves based on what it is that we're doing. Here is Jules now. And just, really avoiding the diet culture, so to speak. So, very, very useful tips. And today we're going to be touching further into what Jules talks about. I'll just add her on now. Today we're going to be touching on the concept of protein, and how that plays out in reality. So I'll add Jules in now. Oh, coming in. And really good reception from Jules's article. Oh, here we go. Jules, how are you going?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
Very, very good. It's a pretty good day. It's sunny outside, and can't complain with well, it's a little bit cold, but I don't know how it is down in Canberra.
It's cold. It's always cold.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, right? I'm lucky enough to be near the beach, but I guess Sydney's are experiencing probably one of the colder winters, but we can't complain too much. And I don't know if you would agree with it, but I've heard that it helps with fat burning a little bit if you're out in the cold.
Well, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
if you're shivering quite a bit.
yeah, like it tends to be like one of those popular trends about the old cold and everything like that. But anyway, we'll move on to kind of what we're going to be talking about today, and that is the topic of protein. In particularly, like one of the questions that we got asked from the community was like, should I be having protein? And
Yep.
I feel like it's probably a fairly contextual question, but I'll let you just put your thoughts out there, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so when you ask me, should I be having protein, do you mean should I be having protein powder or protein in general?
So that is where I'm thinking, okay, they're probably meaning protein powder in the way they ask the question. However, I think we can expand it to say, okay, well, should the average person be concerned about protein? So we'll probably handle the topic of, all right, should the average person be concerned about protein? And then also, I guess that ties into, is protein powder really necessary?
Okay, cool. So should the average person be concerned about protein? Yes and no. You're gonna get used to my non-straight answers.
No, that's the best answer.
Yeah. So yes, we do need to be concerned about protein, but not so much the amount. So most people will be having enough protein already. We don't need all that much protein. But one thing to look out for is the timing of that protein. So a lot of the times we might have most of our protein at dinner and have just like a massive steak. And that ticks the box of, yes, I had enough protein for the day, but you didn't use that protein as well as you could if you've had that same steak as 3 separate meals over the day.
Mm-hmm.
Another very important part is possibly if you're an athlete or adolescent and you're eating quite well throughout the day, then protein tends to resolve itself pretty easily. You get your 30 grams of protein roughly for each meal, and you don't have to necessarily think about that specifically. But if you are over 40, the older you get, the more protein or muscle mass we lose. And that's something that it's important then to try and maintain as much lean mass as we can. And breaking down that protein into smaller meals through the day can be super helpful.
Okay, very interesting. So I think from remembering last time I read a bit of the research, it was kind of that 24 to 30 grams is kind of optimally digested per meal, and like, is that in your experience more important as we get older because the protein synthesis is more efficient, or is there something else to the story there?
Yeah, so we the catabolism is higher, so we do lose more lean mass. So everything that we can do to maintain that, the better. 25 to 30 grams, it is a bit of a general amount, and most of the research is done in men. So also something to consider that maybe females might need a bit less, maybe 20 to 25. There's no specific gold number for that. But it's important to have a look at that as well.
Very interesting.
What was the other part of your question?
Yeah. So the other part would specifically be, okay, well, in context of that, and it actually ties into what I was going to ask as well afterwards, but
Okay.
Is protein powder necessary? Do you recommend protein powders to any clients?
Okay. Yep. Sorry. The main thing to think about protein powder is that it's not magical in any way. It's just a bit of protein.
Yeah.
And most of the time, we can get enough protein from food. And the benefit of that is that when you get protein from food, you also get the nutrients out of that food. So if you're having some red meat, you get iron and zinc. If you have protein from dairy, you get your calcium and some protein and vitamin D. If you get your protein from vegetarian sources like legumes, you get lots of fiber as well and some carbohydrates. So there's a lot more that you get. If you just put a couple scoops of protein on your shake, then you get nothing apart from the protein powder, which can start to create imbalances of nutrients. Something else that is important to consider with protein with protein powders, so the supplement industry is not very well regulated. And in a way, they're a little bit in limbo. They're not a food, they're not a medication. So they have a lot of room, fuzzy delineations there of what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like with protein powder specifically, it's unlikely that it will be spiked with something completely detrimental to your health, as some other supplements might be. But one thing that can happen with protein powder is that it might be diluted with rice powder or a more innocuous powder there that's cheaper.
Yep.
So that you don't get the same amount of protein that you think you're getting.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, like 30 grams of protein, which is what you get in a scoop, you would get in about 90, 100 grams of meat. So it's not, you don't need all that much food to get that same amount of protein.
Interesting, okay.
I think, Ben, what what I was going to say before that it was part of your question and I forgot to answer, and it just came to my mind again, is the number. So the 30 grams, like, can you eat more than 30 grams? Or it's not, again, it's not a magical number, and it's just that the curve starts to flatten and sort of plateau after the 30 grams. So if you eat 40 grams of protein, there is going to be more muscle synthesis at 40 than it is at 30. But the difference is small.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So 30 is a pretty good number in general to have.
Okay, yeah, no, that's
So it's
very
just thinking
interesting.
that, yeah, it's not, if you double the amount of protein, you're going to get double the muscle synthesis. That's not how it works, because the curve starts to flatten.
Interesting. Okay, and that obviously that research is in mainly general populations. Is that right?
Some athletes as well, yeah,
Okay,
but mostly males. So yeah.
cool.
And there is a bit
And
of research in older adults as well. Sorry.
okay, yeah, no, that actually ties into exactly what I was going to ask. Because we do get a lot of clients who are concerned about maintaining muscle mass as they age. So, what
Yep.
recommendations, and also, I guess, tying into kind of what we talked about before, what things should people be doing? Oh, sorry, Kerry's just asked a question also. Is this per meal? Yes, Kerry, that's correct. 30, oh, well,
Yep.
24 to 30 grams per meal is ideal. And what kind of spacing would you say between that, Jules, would be ideal?
About 3 to 4 hours, which is generally matching what your hunger as well. That's sort of the times that you would expect to be hungry again.
Yep.
So yeah, around 3 to 4 hours, 25 to 30 grams of protein, which is the equivalent of about 90 to 100, 110 grams of meat. There's lots of other examples that we can talk about in terms of amounts of protein, but maybe I can just give you a list later and you can share.
Yeah, perfect. I think that kind of stuff is quite useful. And one thing I used to use when I was in the personal training space was sticking to portion sizes and things like that. And I found that quite useful. So I guess back to, like, it kind of ties into what we just spoke about, but as people are aging, and with our programs, a lot of the programs are focused on people with conditions such as osteoarthritis, with pain and joint conditions. A lot of the time, people tend to also struggle with blood glucose management, which is a separate issue. But on the protein side of things, as they are aging, like, what would be ideal for people to be doing so they can help to maintain, I guess, healthy aging and muscle mass?
Yeah, so in terms of nutrition strategies, I would certainly look at the amount of protein and the timing. So amount, protein, amount, timing, and quality of protein. So getting a variety of protein sources, spacing that every 3 to 4 hours, so pretty much every meal and snack, and looking at making sure that there is enough in each one of those. So it's not just dinner that's carrying all the load, all the other meals as well. So most of the time I see that dinner is taken care of and lunch maybe. Breakfast is a tricky one. Breakfast is one that can be quite low in protein, either because people might skip breakfast altogether, or because they might have, say, porridge and make that porridge with water and with a piece of fruit. So very minimal protein in there.
Yeah.
So what I would add to that would be, it can be milk, can be yogurt. Also, as a top up, well, the different types of yogurts. So the new Chobani, Fit, the YoPro, they have a little bit more protein in
Yep.
them. Pepitas and chia seeds also help to boost. They're not massive source, but they help to boost that as well. So, or even having, a couple of boiled eggs as a sort of a side. And for some people that might be struggling with volume,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that we can also recommend is, rather than using protein powder, you can use skim milk powder and mix that with the milk. So you kind of have a double strength milk with the same amount of, the same volume.
Very interesting. Okay. Because I actually do see that a lot with people in the mornings tending to stick to breakfast type foods. And it is either, I guess in Australia, like we like our porridges and mueslis and things like that. And it does kind of lack the protein. And I think in two contexts, I probably would see it as an issue. You might see it in other areas, but if someone has blood glucose management issues like diabetes,
Yeah.
do you see that being a problem?
The lack of protein.
Lack of protein and more carb dominant breakfast.
Yeah, absolutely. It can make their lives a bit harder because those carbohydrates are going to affect blood glucose more than other nutrients, so more than protein and more than fat. So adding the protein, adding a bit of fat. So if you think about adding some yogurt and adding some seeds to that breakfast, helps to delay the whole digestion of it, and with that controls more in terms of your glucose response. Using rolled oats instead of quick oats is also another way to help with that. And if we think about glucose control in general, adding that protein can be super helpful throughout the day, because say if you needed 2-3 pieces of fruit as a snack, that's already 45 grams of carbohydrates in one go. Whereas you might have one piece of fruit and a couple of boiled eggs, or a couple of pieces of cheese, or some avocado, something like that. Then you are reducing the amount of carbs that you have in one go, but also bringing that protein back that will help with the muscle.
Okay, super interesting. So, I guess for people that are aging, and also, I mean, I think from my perspective, I think blood glucose control is a problem for a lot of people, particularly like those that are aging. Do you see it a lot? Like, is it as common as I think it is for you as well?
Well, yes. I mean, first thing, we're all aging.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
But yeah, second, I mean, and probably I'm biased because as dietitian, I would see a lot of people that do struggle with balancing their blood glucose control.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
yeah,
So getting the 30 grams or roughly 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal is a good strategy to combat that as well. Is that correct?
yeah, because it will help the muscle. It will take space of from that meal. And the other thing to think about, which I think it's a really nice way of combining the kind of the function of the muscle, is that another way to store sugar in our blood is through as glycogen in the muscle. So the more muscle you have, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more exercise you do, the more space you have to store glycogen. And the more you use that glycogen so you can replace that again. So you empty those stores and replace that again. So it's a combination of muscle mass and the use of that muscle creates that opportunity for glycogen to be stored and taken out of the blood. And that's something that doesn't need as much insulin to happen. So it's a really good way to help control the sugar levels without putting all the pressure into insulin.
Interesting. Okay, and that's exercise is the mechanism you talk about there.
Yeah, yeah. So with exercise, you would empty those stores.
Cool.
Because with glycogen, it's one of those things that you have to use in that specific muscle for it to go away. If you never use it, then it stays there.
Interesting. Okay. One other question, actually. Apologies, we're going a little bit over time, but I've seen this come up a lot. Is where I've seen clients who restrict their calories quite a bit from an app such as MyFitnessPal, and the recommended macronutrient ratio, and it ties into the total amount of protein you would recommend. The way that I usually look at it is grams per kilogram. But it restricts calories, and then the recommended, like, so if you have the pie chart of the macros, you'd have protein at 15%. And I've seen, women on as low as 1,200 calories eating at 15% of their macronutrients as protein, and then 50% as carbohydrate, and then the rest as fats. I guess, like, would that be too low? And then how would that tie into what you would recommend as the overall amount of protein someone should be eating? Or is it more per
Yeah,
meal?
so that's a great question. And there's two really important points to think about those. One is that using the percentage it's not used anymore. Ideally, you would use grams per kilograms of body weight. That's a more specific way of looking as to how much protein you need. And the other thing, which is then, the 25 to 30 grams, matches similarly to, well, it's a better measure there. But the other thing is that those apps, they tend to be quite aggressive with their recommendations of how much to reduce. Which can lead to a whole bunch of other problems. So in a way, whenever I work with clients to say reduce their energy intake or build it up, usually protein it's always constant. It's the constant nutrient. And then we just play with carbohydrates and fat to create a restriction or bring them back to maintenance, because that's the biggest risk there, is that you reduce your energy too much, but you also reduce the protein, and you might lose weight, but you're probably losing a lot of lean mass in that process, which is not exactly what people are trying to do when they decided to restrict their energy.
Yeah, super interesting. And I guess, what are some of the problems that you see people encounter when they do restrict things on the protein side of things, but also just if they were sticking to one of those applications?
Yeah, so there's lots of different things. So by restricting too much, you reduce your energy availability. And with low energy availability, so it's okay, the body always uses calories for exercise first, and then whatever's left it will use for your general kind of metabolism. So if you don't have enough energy left for the metabolism, it starts to compromise. The first things are less important, so it might be your hair and your nails that are not great, but then it starts to interfere with with how you sleep and how you recover. And then it kind of continues on to interfering with your hormones, interfering with your bone health, interfering with your endocrine system. So it starts to really go downhill. The body, the other thing that happens often is the body is always trying to find balance, and it will adjust itself to live within that amount of energy that it's receiving. So I see a lot of people putting themselves into a corner where now they maintain a weight they're not happy with, just eating very, very small amounts of food. And if they increase a little bit, they put on weight straight away. So it's like, oh, I look at that piece of cake and it's already here.
Yeah.
So that's a result of that intense restriction. And then also for other people, using apps all the time can create a sense of anxiety that I don't think we need to add that to our lives.
Of course.
And there's always a little bit of judgment on the app going, oh no, you went past your goals, or you ate this many grams of carbohydrates. And I even came across one that gave you ratings like A+, B-.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, I failed today. Like that's yeah, you don't want to go there.
It's fantastic, right? Like, I'm just trying to eat food, and next thing I got an F on my my score, right? That rung really close to home when you were talking about someone looks at food, because I've heard this with a lot of clients. Like they say, "Oh, I look at food and it spikes my weight" or something like that. What do those people do to get out of that once they've been on a really restrictive diet?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky one. It's a bit more of a personal. You would have to look at all the things that are contributing to that. But in general, the idea is to slowly provide more food and sort of refeed that person so that we change what their maintenance level is. So say prior they were eating 800 calories and maintaining their weight. What we want to do is very slowly bring that back up to say 1500, because now you have room to play up and down if you need to. It is a slow process, and there's other things to consider, but that's generally the direction that you would take.
Cool. And so those people will maintain their weight when they do that progressively?
Yeah. The idea is that you would maintain as close as possible. And that's why it's a very slow process.
Yeah, okay. And would you use something like exercise?
If you do it too fast.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, if you do it too fast, then you might put on weight because the body doesn't know what to do with all that sudden extra amount of food that's receiving.
Interesting. Okay. And would you use exercise while doing that to help the body utilize the fuel more efficiently?
You can. It depends again on how much exercise the person is doing. In situations where they're over exercising and the exercise is contributing a lot, so it's taking a lot of that energy, we then work with the EP and the physios to help them maintain their fitness while reducing the exercise so that they're not expending as much, and we can match the calories a little bit better. And then you reintroduce the exercise. So in a way, it's for some people it's a bit of a threat of like, hey, if you don't eat more, then that's going to impact on your exercise and your activities. And it's like, no. I'll work on eating a bit more so you don't have to go that path.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, like in the context that I've seen it in, it is a lot more prevalent than someone who hasn't dealt with it would realize. And I think from the point of view of exercise, it's important to realize that, exercise from the standpoint of an exercise physiologist, there's different goals for different forms of exercise. There's not just one exercise. There's exercise for building muscle, there's rehabilitation, there's cardio, and then most importantly, and what we teach is empowerment to enjoy exercise and the activities. The stuff that we do at MTP, it's a bit of a means to an end. People are coming in, they're getting stronger and fitter and healthier, but it's so they can do things outside of the gym. It's so they can go for an extra walk, they can hike, they can do rock climbing, they can play sport again. So I guess there's exercise, and then there's the fun stuff. Like I think that's just movement. So
Yeah.
I, yeah, I mean it's an interesting one, but I just wanted to make a little aside there just for people to realize that. I guess so. We've gone a little bit over time. Apologies for that, but I think we got on a really good topic of discussion there,
No worries.
stuff that I know people struggle with. So, do you want
Yeah,
to
no,
leave us?
wonderful.
Oh, sorry. There's a bit of a delay.
No, that's okay. All good.
I was just going to say, do you want to leave us with any closing messages or anything you'd like to leave the community with?
I'd say that the biggest point here to remember is that look at quality and look at timing of protein, not just amounts. So don't focus too much on amounts piling up 3 steaks on your plate. It's more quality and timing, particularly at breakfast.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, really, really cool. No, that's great stuff. Kerry said, great discussion. Thank you, Kerry, for the feedback, and it's good to see everyone's checking in at the
Awesome.
moment. If we could actually get some more articles from you, Jules, that'd be great because some of those articles went down really, really well, and I've had some people commenting about like, oh, I'd like to hear more from Jules and things like that. So yeah, it'll be great to continue the discussion in the community and go from there.
Yep, awesome. Can do that.
No worries. Oh, there we go. Luke, great to have you sharing your knowledge and insights. Thanks for the comment, Luke. Unreal. Um,
No worries.
all good. We'll speak soon, Jules. Thanks very much. Enjoy your week.
Cool. Cheers.
Cheers.